Patreon Q&A 161. There's going to be spoilers for all of the series that I'm going to be talking about, so tread carefully. Mateo asks, do you think Star and Stripe will have a quirk awakening since she has a flashback of her comrades from the military because of how much support she received from them just before Shigaraki touches her head for stealing her quirk? So this is a possibility, I suppose, because I was talking about in my video for this chapter about just the possibilities in general of what she could be doing to save herself from getting hijacked by Shigaraki here or just getting destroyed altogether. And I was saying that maybe she can make like a last second rule that maybe completely disables New Order or just removes it altogether. Maybe she can make a rule that says my quirk factor will disintegrate or something like that. Because that's what it ultimately comes down to, right? And that's how Aizawa's quirk works, like it targets your quirk factor. So it could be that or some kind of rule to where her quirk cannot be taken in that moment, or she just tries to completely take herself out altogether. But either way, I don't think that these options will happen because Shigaraki kind of needs to take New Order here, you know, because it would kind of be a waste of time if he does. Like, don't get me wrong, this fight is amazing, maybe the best in the series so far. But if it ends with him not getting New Order, then I'm just confused as to the purpose of this, other than just it being a cool fight and Star jobbing to Shigaraki so that we know how powerful he is, which we already kind of knew. So I'm pretty sure this will end with him getting that quirk. So I guess it's more of a possibility that she could like awaken it here rather than the quirk, you know, being destroyed or something. And that brings us to the question of like, what could her awakening even be? Because we already barely have an understanding of what just her base quirk could do in general. So now we're coming to the next level of something that we don't fully understand. So I assume that like instead of giving her a whole new set of abilities or a new ability, it'll just expand upon what she currently can do. Because you know, Horikoshi has been going out of his way to establish how this quirk works and how it doesn't. And a couple chapters back, we had like that barometer of power showing us that it more so has power over weakening something than strengthening it. Which brings me back to why it would probably be possible for her to just completely destroy the quirk itself, kind of like how you can write a program to delete itself. But with her hypothetical quirk awakening here, maybe the barometer or the meter could be moved completely to both ends of the spectrum, meaning that she could just fully weaken or strengthen something like she wouldn't be able to otherwise. And then, you know, further in this situation, Shigaraki would be taking said awakened New Order here, so now he has access to that. So it just seems like it would cause maybe more problems than it's worth. So I don't expect quirk awakening here, although like I said, it is a possibility, but seems a little superfluous at this point since it already is overpowered, and I guess it already is bringing enough complications with it as it is. But it would be cool, of course, and I'd like to see it. Why not? Joseph O asks, do you believe that the final battle will come down to Deku or Shigaraki trying to get their quirks off first and then a battle of wills meant? So I don't think so. I think it'll be similar to maybe what we saw in the war between them, where they're having like the standard final shonen battle between the protagonists and antagonists. And I'm not saying it's going to be formulaic or anything. It's going to be great. Horikoshi usually almost always delivers, but I think it'll be a simultaneous physical battle and a battle of wills, like what you're saying here. I don't think they're going to be taking turns or there's going to be like separate rounds where these can be decided. I think it's going to encompass everything in this one last fight, but more of the talking element, because surprisingly there wasn't as much as you think there would have been in their war fight. Sean H asks, have you heard of Hell's Paradise? It's commonly put into a trio alongside Chainsaw Man and JJK. It's a finished series and it's getting an anime sometimes next year, and I was wondering if you'd make a review of it when it does. So I haven't heard of this, and I looked it up and I read the summary and I saw some of the art and it looks good. And if it does get its anime and the anime gets some traction, then I for sure will check it out and review it. But I don't want to make any promises. It's really predicated on its potential popularity. Delamante asks, who is one human fighter that you would like to see fight for mankind and one god you would like to see fight for gods not introduced in Record of Ragnarok? So this is a great question, and I'd like to see for the humans like George Washington or Teddy Roosevelt fight, and like their Volan could be like an American flag spear or something like that. And as for the gods, I'd like to see like Sumerian gods step in, maybe more so like the Sumerian demons like a Zog or something like that. I think that'd be really cool. Samurai asks, does War Arc Deku have what it takes to defeat the USJ Nomu, and if no, does current manga Deku? So I think maybe it's too soon for either of them to take down the USJ Nomu, and maybe Horikoshi would disagree with that, but if we're like looking at it on the page and like, in the episode itself, I still don't think current Deku has enough of a shot to take down the USJ Nomu. I mean, he could go 100% and trade some blows like we saw against Shigaraki in the war, but the amount of effort that All Might had to put in to take care of the USJ Nomu, especially with like his foil quirk set, I just don't think currently Deku could replicate what we saw All Might do at USJ. I could be wrong, but it just doesn't seem like that right now. Maybe with the Eri rewind hacks he could. Jimmy P asks, do you think that Blast is a descendant of the entity god, and that's where his abilities possibly come from? So I've made a few videos about this actually. You can check out this video if you haven't seen it yet, but I do think that there's a possibility that Blast is somehow related to God, or his powers come from him in some way, you know, because of the cube stuff and because God knows Blast by name, and also, you know, how Blast's powers are very peculiar. So I wouldn't be surprised if maybe he touched the cube one day and almost made a deal with God, or made a deal with God and somehow figured out how to get out of the confiscation aspect of it, or somehow to not be subservient to him. That's always a possibility, but I don't think he's related to God, because God doesn't seem like someone who can like have children, or at least biologically the way that we do. If he does have some kind of offspring, it seems like he would just like create them like some kind of Marvel cosmic being would. But I wouldn't be surprised if Blast's abilities have something to do with God, because, you know, like you pointed out, and like I point out in my other videos, it's probably intentional, the similarities between him and the Homeless Emperor in those panels. Little Ferrari asks, if you had the opportunity to meet one famous person, who would it be and why? So probably one, or Oda, so I can just ask them questions. But to be honest, I'm a little hesitant on meeting like famous people or people that I look up to or follow or respect or whatever, because, you know, that age-old saying, don't meet your heroes, and it seems to be true because, you know, with social media nowadays and everything, you're hearing more and more stories of people meeting famous people or whatever, and it turns out that, you know, they're kind of jerks or whatever. So maybe it's probably better to keep our healthy parasocial relationships that we have with famous people, you know, unless you just randomly meet them somehow organically, then that's a different story. But I wouldn't go out of my way to meet someone famous, unless it was like Oda or one, like I said. They probably don't want to meet me, and definitely don't want to hear me fanboy out in front of them and ask them questions that they've already heard a million times before. Professor asks, what could be the ultimate goal of Rewind for the end game of the series? So I do think that there is an ultimate goal for it, and it's possible that maybe Izuku winds up taking it from Eri and uses it to fix the series in some way. Now, I do think that there's a good chance that he might rewind Shigaraki back to being like Tenko, so therefore he is saved, but also it could be used to like save the world from the quirk singularity in some way, because I do think it's ultimately going to come down to Deku saving everyone from that, and I am going to make a video about it soon. But either way, I just think it ultimately comes down to Izuku getting the rewind power, or just the rewind power being used for a substantial goal in the overall series. But that's pretty much it for the video today, guys. Once again, I want to thank all of my patrons, guys. I appreciate it so much for your continued support. And if you would like to be in next week's Q&A, simply check out the Patreon. The link is in the description. And if you liked the video, please give it a like, and please subscribe if you haven't already. Have a great day. I'll see you in the next one.